Now, Executive Suites with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and there's nothing wrong with your set. What you see in front of me is some very fun props we have with us today, because we are going to talk about the business of toys with a man who knows it better than anyone else, and one of the most storied names in Rhode Island corporate history, Hasbro, the Pawtucket toy maker, though they're much more than the toy maker today. We are talking to the Chairman, President, and CEO of Hasbro, Brian Goldner. Brian, thank you for being here.
Great to be with you, Ted.
It's great to have you. And you know, this is different from some shows. Everybody knows Hasbro in Rhode Island and well outside of Rhode Island. They might not know just how big a company Hasbro is all over the world. Can you just give us a thumbnail sketch of how big Hasbro is these days? Sure.
Well, we're about $4.5 billion in revenue, and we made about $850 million last year in EBITDA earnings. We're in 40 offices around the world. We have personnel all over the world, and in fact today half of our employees are manning countries around the world, so about half our employees are outside the United States. We have employees that are in Boulder, Colorado making mobile games. We have employees in Los Angeles making TV series and animated movies. We have employees doing licensing all over the world, because we don't just make toys and games anymore. We work with people who are making backpacks and bedding and shoes and other products that are associated with our brands. And we have lots of partners who are also working with us to make movies and to bring our brands to life in any number of ways.
So all over, a lot to manage as a CEO, I assume, to keep track of all that.
Yeah, well, it's a really fun job.
Yeah.
So, you know, we really enjoy what we do, and if you enjoy what you do and you follow your bliss, and you do it well.
So you've been with Hasbro since 2000. You became CEO in 2008, became chairman in 2015. But, you know, when you look back, when you read in the archives from 2000 where Hasbro was, the company wasn't necessarily in a really strong position when you walked in. And to help us, you know, get situated with where the company is today, take us back a little bit. What was going on at Hasbro in 2000 that had you and some of the other management a little nervous?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, in the 1980s, the company performed very well. In fact, it had invented kids television and putting shows like Transformers and My Little Pony on the air back at that time, and those brands grew dramatically. And then in the 1990s, took a different tack. We really focused on a lot of other people's properties, did a lot of licensing of other people's brands, and became more of a manufacturer of other people's items. And our brands got smaller. And so by 2000, we didn't have one brand at the company that was more than $100 million in sales.
Oh, wow.
In fact, brands like Transformers were $30 million businesses. So it had become very, very small and less consequential to consumers all over the world. So our job in the early 2000s was to identify those brands that we thought had the greatest potentiality over time to grow back to being as big as they may have been over time, or even bigger, and then to start to put a team against that, to really work on building those brands back. So My Little Pony, Transformers, Littlest Pet Shop were all brands that we began to focus on to grow the company back to where it is today. So if you look, we started back in 2000 around $2.5 billion, and unfortunately at that time we were losing money. And today we're $4.5 billion and making about a 15% operating profit.
So it's worked pretty well, you'd say.
We have a great team, and it's working really well.
So we in the media, we always, and we probably always will to some extent, call Hasbro a toy company. Mm-hmm. But when you read about what Hasbro is today, and you're alluding to it there, it's much more than a toy company. Play and toys are at the center of what you do, but how do you think of Hasbro today and what it is as a company with all those brands and all the different things you're doing?
Yeah, you really hit upon it. It's really a branded play company, and we focus on something we call our brand blueprint, which just means we put our brands in the center of everything we do. We then look at our brands through the lens of consumers and audiences. So we spend a lot of time around the world understanding what people in every market around the world are doing for play.
How do you actually do that? What do you have focus groups?
So in Pawtucket, some people have probably taken their children at some point to the Fun Lab, but we have Fun Labs now all over the world. So people are coming in to play with toys. We also do quantitative studies, so big quantitative studies where we look at what it might be to be a modern girl or a modern boy or a modern fan. And we do those studies in Russia and China and in the UK and in the US.
So you have to look at cultural differences then, right? I'm assuming you can't, an American toy isn't necessarily going to hit in Russia the same way.
You know what's interesting is that the brands, the fundamental truth about the brand can be remarkably the same. and then the way we approach the brand or the way we think about the brand might be different. We also find many times we find ideas outside the U.S. that then are relevant to the U.S., but we first found that idea, for example, in Brazil or in Russia or someplace else. People give us some clues about new ways to play with toys and with brands that we hadn't thought of before.
So the sexiest, I'd say, thing in recent years has been the movies. Transformers, of course, G.I. Joe, Battleship, a whole bunch, taking the brands, the famous brands that have come out of Hasbro over the years and turning them these big budget blockbusters. How important are the movies? You know, they make a big impact on all of us who see them in the theater and think, how important are they nowadays to what Hasbro is as a company?
Well, it's important to us on a number of levels. It's not the only way we drive our brands, but it's certainly important for a couple of reasons. One is the global box office has grown dramatically. And what you find is now the global box office is about 70% oriented outside the U.S. Or said differently, a movie will do about a third of its business in the U.S. And where it's doing its business is all over the world, particularly in emerging markets. If you go out to Russia, China, Korea, Colombia, all these markets, you find that what they're building in those markets and constructing are malls and multiplexes. So people are going out more than ever before to the movies and watching movies, so that box office is a way to introduce our brands to a new audience all around the world. Then our brands like Transformers have done billions of dollars in box office, and of course it helps us to introduce those brands across consumer products and make them highly relevant in these new markets for Hasbro all over the world.
Now, if I remember the story right, you cold called someone in the mid-2000s, and that's kind of what got all this movie stuff started up. Is that right?
Yeah, we went out to a lot. I think I got disinvited from more studios than I got invited into. When you go into a studio, and this was just after Spider-Man had become a major movie, and it had an animation DNA. And I went into these studios, and you say, well, I'd like to have these giant robots, and they're going to talk, and they're going to be humans, and people would sort of say, wait, hold on a second, I'm not sure I quite get that. And it took a couple of people who were visionary to really think about that, and we met with Steven Spielberg, who was one who's been kind of the godfather of Transformers movies, and executive producer along with me and a few other people in making our movies. And they saw what we saw, what I saw, and that was that Transformers was a wonderful brand that could tell wonderful stories in the movie business, and it just needed somebody to partner with us. So Paramount partnered up with us to make those movies, and today they're making movie number 5.
So another off the beaten path to some extent brand I didn't realize was as big as this, Play-Doh. We all know Play-Doh, in some ways a simple idea. We all have played with Play-Doh all our lives. Apparently it's doing really well, right? It's taking off. How are you able to keep something like Play-Doh that seems so simple still relevant in 2016? Well,
in fact, parents all over the world love Play-Doh because it helps their kids to accomplish developmental milestones that no other brand helps accomplish. It's colorful, it's tactile, they get their hands on it.
They want to eat
learn.
it?
Well, no.
I know you say don't,
fun to play with, not to eat.
Yeah,
right? Isn't that the line? So they get to play with it, and parents all over the world want those kids to accomplish those developmental milestones. But it wouldn't be enough if that were only it. Mm-hmm. Kids love the brand. They love to play with the brand, and it's unique in the universe because of the way you get your hands on the brand and you create things that you couldn't create with any other plaything.
Another huge one, Nerf. Nerf is the biggest of the Hasbro brands right now?
It's actually our biggest brand overall. It's bigger than Star Wars. It's bigger than any other brand that we have at Hasbro. And we said that the other week when we did our earnings because I don't think people would know that. I think they would think Star Wars or some other movie-related brand would be the biggest because, as you say, movies are so exciting. But Nerf is actually our biggest brand by a long measure. It's grown over a number of years. When we first started back in 2000, Nerf was about a $20 million business. So we've grown this brand dramatically at the company because of an incredible team of innovators and marketers who continued to reinvent that brand and offer new play opportunities. And then we have this great fan base. We only create 3% of all the marketing around Nerf. 97% is created by our fans and our users. They make their own videos. You go to YouTube, They make their own videos, they're making their own skits, they're telling their own stories, and they're using our blasters and products to enable them to tell those great stories.
Nerf, wow, a big business in Nerf and Play-Doh and all that. We're going to talk about another big business after a break about how Hasbro and this gentleman and his colleagues lured princesses away from Mattel, a coup in the toy industry. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and very pleased to be joined this week by the Chairman, President, and CEO of Hasbro, the iconic Rhode Island toy company. They're doing much more than toys now, Brian Goldner. And Brian, I mentioned before the break, and I have to ask you about, we actually have the cover of Business Week. You don't always see princess toys on the cover of Bloomberg Business Week, but it said, "My heart belongs to Hasbro, why Disney's princesses dumped Mattel." You see it right there. This was a big story in the business world, how Hasbro managed to get the rights starting this year in 2016 from Mattel for Disney's Frozen and Princess brands. Analysts called it a coup. How big a deal was that for Hasbro?
Well, it's a very big deal for us, but probably for reasons you wouldn't expect. We've done so much work, and we talked about the kind of work we've done around consumer insights and understanding our consumer better than anybody else. And so we've done these studies about modern girls, and back when my daughter was just 5 years old and she would walk around the halls of Hasbro and put her hands on her hips and say, "Dad, there aren't a lot of toys for girls." And we set out to build a business, and over the last number of years we now have a business that's about $1 billion in girls business, not even including the Disney Princess and Frozen business. Well, that, of course, caused some people to pay attention to us in the girls space, and Disney and Hasbro began a conversation. We were then able to share with them all of the consumer insight work we do around the girls business and how we think about girls and how we think about girls around the world. We then did a study called Modern Princess, and we began to understand what it means to be empowered today as a girl. We want our girls to be empowered, to think differently about what it means to be a girl, to be anything you want to be. And we felt the Princess brand could help enable them to get that empowerment and to see it beyond just where they were today. And so we began to work with Disney on that thought process. They said, "Well, why don't you take a crack at showing us what the dolls might look like and some other product." We first began to work on a product line called The Descendants, which was based on a Disney Channel original movie which came out last year, and the product line did very, very well. In fact, it's continuing this year as they launch another movie coming up on the Disney Channel movie over a period of time. And then we began to work on Disney Princess and Frozen, and they loved what we did, and we have a great innovative team that's putting together some amazing product. In fact, if you go out to retail today, it's just hitting retail shelves, and we're very excited. The results are much better than the prior product already. Early days, but it's really great to see that all of our work in understanding the audience and the consumer and giving girls that sense of fashion and each of the different princesses is really working for
Did you have a wow moment where you said, I mean, you clearly knew all along grabbing Disney from Mattel would make a statement to the marketplace. Did you have a moment where you said, we can win this, we can get this? Because Mattel had been doing that for a while. Did you have a moment where you said, oh, okay, this is going to work, we're putting all hands on deck on this? You know
what was fun was the team went out and did a presentation. And the presentation had nothing to do with a financial offer. It was just about the thought process that was going to go into the design and the development, the marketing of, and the understanding of girls. And they made the presentation, and the whole Disney team applauded them. And we had an idea at that point that we were on the right track and that they thought like we thought, because we're both big companies, we're both very committed to the space, we're very committed to girls and girls' toys and girls' playthings and storytelling. And storytelling is a key element of all of these brands, including the Disney brands. And so they really loved what we had to say, and we began to partner together, and we've built a great partnership. But remember, we weren't just in the business with Disney on Princess and Frozen. We've been doing Star Wars for many, many years.
Star Wars, yeah.
So many, many years Star Wars, as well as the Marvel business for a number of years. So now we have really three big marquee brands: the Lucasfilm Star Wars business, Marvel, and Disney Princess and Frozen.
And how did the Star Wars toys, did they meet your expectations last year after the new movie came out?
Oh, they were at the high end of our expectations. What we said, we did about $500 million in sales on Star Wars last year, and we've said that for 2016, we thought it would be similar size sales. But the great part, as we talked about, is brands like Nerf are rivaling Star Wars, and we also have Play-Doh that's grown dramatically. Right. It's had its best year in the last 3 years, each of the last 3 years, and that's now several $100 million size business. So yes, we love our partner brands, as we call them, the brands that we do with partners like Disney. But we also love building our own franchise brands.
I want to take you back a little further in your career. People might not know that one of the formative experiences you had, you worked on the Power Rangers, which any child of the 1990s like myself remembers. Exactly. When they hit so hard. What did you learn? What did you take away from those years when Power Rangers was such a big hit and you were right there working on it?
Well, what we found was this idea that you could introduce a brand to an audience and then connect with that audience across a multiple of platforms, multiple mediums. At that time, there weren't, the internet and social media wasn't as prevalent. Obviously, you didn't have smartphones, but you still had the opportunity to connect with people in a number of ways. So we did location-based entertainment. The Power Rangers came live on tour. They had movies, they had toys and games, you had all kinds of...
They were everywhere for a while.
Exactly,
yeah.
Interactive playthings. So that 360-degree experience you can build for a brand was something that I learned. And then the question was just, how do you contemporize that idea, given all the modern technology we have, all the screens that we have, not losing sight of the fact that play is still the most favorite thing that kids do. In other words, kids still play with playthings more than they play with screens.
I wanted to ask you that because do you worry? You are the toy man in a lot of ways. As CEO, you and your colleagues at the other big toy companies. Do you worry as you watch kids on iPads and Kindles? I see my colleague Tim White's kids are always on their Kindle Fires. Do you worry about that they're going to move past more of the traditional toys that you do?
No, what we're actually seeing is that kids do spend time on screens, and we want to give them the stories and our brands in those formats. But what we're actually finding is that parents overall have a question in their minds about how much screen time is good. And we're working now with Harvard University and Boston's Children's Hospital and working on a longitudinal or long-term study that helps to explore what play really is about and how screens help development and how playing with playthings help the development of young people. And I think that that's really interesting. You know, I just was reading an article this morning talking about reading nonfiction books helps you to be successful in social settings. Because reading nonfiction books helps you to put yourself in the character's position and to think through and imagine what that might be like. So the same thing. When you play with other children and you have the opportunity to play with tangible playthings, or you're playing a game across the table from friends, you can't replace that by playing on a screen by yourself.
Yeah.
That's a irreplaceable experience. And developing that EQ, that ability to connect with people and look them in the eye, and maybe you're taunting them over a game, but you're still interacting in a way that you can't interact with a screen. And so we think that's a very valuable way to play. And in fact, parents are saying the same thing. And we believe that all play is great, just in the right amount.
The right amounts. All right. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Brian Goldner about his thoughts on Rhode Island as we have a somewhat new governor. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and we are talking this week with the Chairman, President, and CEO of Hasbro, Brian Goldner. And of course, as I've said repeatedly, Hasbro, one of the most iconic, best-known companies in Rhode Island. You have your headquarters in Pawtucket. I think it's an old A&P, right? As Rhode Island.
Yeah, the smaller building people would know with the potato head is the A&P, and then the building across the way was originally a textile manufacturing facility, and then became our headquarters where we made G.I. Joes back in the...
There's always what it used to be story in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And then of course...
Don't ask for directions either, because you just get the what it used to be.
Exactly. Yeah. And now you have the very highly visible office in downtown Providence. You have the spinning Hasbro logo there and everything. So
I think that's a dice. I want to say that's like
a die.
Dice? I think it should be a die. What do you think?
Yeah, you're the CEO. I'm going to defer to you on that. You're the chairman and everything. How committed is Hasbro to staying and growing the business? And you did mention before you have offices in different places because you need to be. So how committed are you to continuing to grow your presence and stay in Rhode Island?
You know, we're very committed. I mean, we really believe that the state is on the right track. There are lots of things that we can do to continue to build the state to be as excellent as we all imagine it to be. We're committed to partnering to do that. You know, there's no sense in saying it's not doing all the things that it could do without partnering and putting your own effort in to make that happen. And so we're all committed to doing that, and our employees are committed to making it as great a state as it can be, and we give back charitably, and we give back in commitments to time and volunteering. We pay our employees every month to go out and take some hours into their communities and make sure that they're able to do what they want. They follow their own passion around giving. We have a Global Day of Joy where all of our employees in the entire company get paid to go off for one day around the world and contribute back. And last year we affected, in a very positive way, 80,000 kids around the world. So we give back locally and we give back globally, but everywhere we do business around the world, we want to make a commitment to make the place we're in better over time.
Governor Raimondo, still fairly new governor. She's mentioned in the past reaching out to you and other big corporate leaders, Larry Merlo and others who have run the big companies around here, for your thoughts on the economy. What sort of advice have you given her? What have you told her would be a good thing to focus on from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think our governor's on the right track. I mean, we have to have a well-educated workforce. We have to have a workforce that's trained in modern technologies so that they can have the computer science skills or literacy skills or math skills that they need to be employed. You know, I think the idea that we're just going to bring back manufacturing, and in some way that's saying it's like low-skilled labor. Manufacturing today is a very sophisticated process. You have to have skills even to be in the manufacturing process, and we do rapid prototyping in manufacturing and developing all kinds of technologies. So I think she's on the right track in making sure that Rhode Islanders have the skills that we need. We want to partner to give people that opportunity. We've built quite an extensive internship program, and we hire a lot of entry-level positions. In fact, 49% of our workforce has been at Hasbro for less than 5 years. So we're really committed to the idea of giving people the opportunity to be at Hasbro and to build a career at Hasbro. And the great thing about being at Hasbro is you never have just one career. I've had multiple careers, 10 or 12 different hats over the 15, 16 years since I've been there. So I think that the key for the state is focusing in on helping to train a workforce, to develop a workforce, to bring new companies in that can continue to employ people. I'm talking to people, I think that the momentum is building and that people are talking about bringing companies to Rhode Island, and we want them to come to Rhode Island to continue to build our communities and to build out the infrastructure of the state.
You were brought in on one of the biggest efforts in that, trying to woo General Electric. Didn't end up with them choosing Rhode Island. They chose Boston, but they are still looking at Rhode Island. What did you take away from that as one of the corporate leaders asked to kind of do some arm twisting with your fellow executives?
We met with them as part of a process, and look, I would say that we are on the right track, and I think the things that we're thinking about to continue to enhance our community are the right things. For example, getting the airport and the runway the right way so we can get more flights to more places. That's the key. I said that 5 years ago at a business forum. I would say it again today. And I know we're on the right track to do that, and we want to partner with the governor to do that. We're going to do that because the more we can get flights to places, the more people we can bring in. Hasbro books thousands of room nights each year, 7,000 room nights in Rhode Island. We want to be able to bring people here. Our customers from all over the world come here to see our product lines. So having an airport that can enable us to do that is an important element. Having a very robust economy brings other people. When you have people who are successful here, like CVS and Larry Merlot and his team and Hasbro and other corporate leaders here who are being successful, it attracts other corporate leaders. So we want to share with them our experiences in being able to hire high-tech talent and new talent to the state and to our offices, and that's something that they wanted to hear. So I think that you can't look at a moment in time and say there's one company that we're betting everything on. I think what the idea is to build an environment, a culture of innovation and reinvention that enables people to come here over time.
30 seconds left. Hasbro just named the 2016 World's Most Ethical Company. How do you manage that when you also have shareholders who care about the bottom line?
Oh, it's all the same. It's about a commitment as individuals. We treat our company and each other the way we'd want to be treated. We approach the business like individuals. I'm just a person like everybody else, and treat each other in that same respectful manner. We look at our environment and our footprint and our impact on the environment. We cut out all the waste that we can cut out. We try to look at everything in a very economic way, but also, in a very corporately, socially responsible way. And I think both of those go hand in hand. And you can be a very successful company and do the right thing.
All right, Brian Goldner, Chairman, President, and CEO of Hasbro, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you for watching the conversation today on Executive Suite. Remember, you can catch all the episodes on WPRI.com, and we'll see you back here next week.